So we've been introducing options. We've had the chance to look at long stocks and had the chance to look at short stocks, and now we've been dealing with options. And I would say, and this is just my opinion, that a person should, at a minimum, learn what a strike price is, what a premium is, and what an expiration date is before they even think about doing this. And if you're going to do this regular and advanced level, you should learn what's called the Greeks. Now, the Greeks are a little bit beyond the scope of the Four Pillars class. The Four Pillars is designed to bring people into awareness and competency. So if you really like these and want to go to the next level with them and trade them in a way that's even more safe, take the Ultimate Options course, and we practice a lot of really intense stuff. It's very much an intermediate class. And I also believe that the type of options you're going to be buying and selling and the type of strategies affect how much a person needs to know to do this. But if a person does not know what premium, strike price, expiration, in the money, out of the money, these basic things, I think they're at very, very high risk. So let's talk about expiration. This is a very important thing. And let's go back to our example as we introduce the fact these options expire to our insurance contract. When I insure my car, maybe it's at 6 months at a time. So let's just write that down. 6 months, maybe. And then it expires and it's no good. So notice that when this guy sells me insurance, right, contract, I hand him money, and that's good for 6 months. So what happens is you might look at it like this, is maybe I give him $1,000. I don't know what it is. And maybe this is month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, month 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That money goes down and down and down and down and down, and the value goes down until boom, that 6 months is over. And what do? I start this again. I pay him another $1,000 maybe for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And I get that value, and it goes down and down and down and down and down and boom and boom. And from his standpoint, he likes this idea because, the closer he gets to expiration, the sooner he gets to say, hey, that money is mine forever. I'm never going to have to pay that back in the form of a claim. So people who are the sellers over here get very, very happy with the idea of something called time decay. In other words, time marches on, right? It's unstoppable. It's predictable. We don't know who's going to win the World Series, but we definitely know that 6 months will pass, and then another 6 months will pass. So it's a very interesting thing. Rental contract, we could do the same thing. Maybe this is a rental agreement, right? And this guy says, hey, I want to take this rental agreement, and this is called rent right here, right? So this is a rental agreement. And there's the rent. So this guy here is the landlord, right? He's the landlord. He's collecting rent and he's offering this agreement. Well, this might be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It might be 30 days, right? Where now you pay your $1,000 for rent, and sure enough, down it goes. And you pay another $1,000, and sure enough, down it goes. Now, the house could be going up and down in value the whole time here, but this cash is flowing, and it's being infused every 30 days. Well, guess what? An option contract, let's just say it's a call option, will give this person the choice, and what's another word for choice that starts with an O? A choice to buy XYZ stock over here, right? Choice to buy XYZ stock at a certain price, at a strike price, right? Well, maybe this is a 30-day option. Maybe it's only 4 weeks as well. 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And maybe he paid, $1,000 for this option. Maybe it's a bunch of contracts. and down it goes and it expires. So this idea of expiration, I would definitely want to know the expiration date when my insurance runs out. I definitely want to know the last day I'm able to stay in the house before I have to pay again. I would definitely want to know the expiration date. I just can't say that loud enough that a person should not trade an option if they're clueless on the expiration date. Okay. And so again, notice this idea of time decay, and I'm going to flip the graph now, and let's put the $1,000 here, 0, and let's make the time go backwards. 4, 3, 2, 1 month, 0 months. And so a person, or weeks, we should say. So a person comes up here, he spends $1,000, and down it goes. Well, the time decay of 30 days, 20 days, 10 days, 0 days. Maybe a person, spends $1,000 on some option here. It doesn't go linear. It goes more like that. We're going to talk about how this works because it's very, 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 very important to improve and give us better insight when we buy an option or when we sell an option. And I'm not going to go through all the math here necessarily. I guess I could if you're an engineer and you're really, really wonky and you care about that type of thing. Pop out of theater mode, and if you're like me, you don't care about this because I'm just an old basketball player. But if you're like one of these calculus guys and derivatives and functions and algebraic engineers, this might be interesting to you. So if you look at we'll just do this basically. If you look at the Black-Scholes model, time is time to maturity, or the expiration date that we're talking about. If you'll notice in here, we have a square root, and we have we can very much have a negative number here because time marches on this way. So if we just take a basic function and we have time running out, right? Just whatever we have as a function of time running out, we put it under a square root sign like they have here. We're going to get a basic graph of this function that looks like that. See, it's not linear, and you can see how it really slopes down quickly here. And then it just flattens and flattens and flattens and flattens and flattens and flattens out here. So for those of you that are very wonky, you can get your fix. For those of you that say, hey, I'm like Andy, just give me the bottom line, this is somewhat what it looks like. And this is a basic time decay graph. And this is important because just if you will, watch this. Let's take a line. And let's just go, I don't know, from up to here, and then take it straight up to here, and then take it straight up to here, and then straight up to here. And let's just start with April, and let's just draw a line that is straight over like this. So maybe I decide right here, April, May, June, July. So here we have 4 months of a 4 months option, April, May, June, July, so 4 months. And I pay a certain price for that option, okay? I pay a certain price for it. And I do the same thing here and the same thing here, and then we have this. Now watch this. Look at how much time and price is lost in this last month. Look at that. Look how much of that. And we talked about this idea of time value. Remember that? So we had intrinsic value and we had time value. Well, if I'm going to pay for time, I know that will eventually run out. Let me say that again. If I pay for time, I know that will eventually run out. So in the last segment, when we had maybe a dollar of intrinsic value and 78 cents of time value, I know that 78 cents is toast, meaning that stock is going to have to climb higher than that number before expiration runs out. Well, look, if I buy a 1 month option, look at all that time that I will lose in and particularly in the last 2 weeks, right? But if I go back one more month, look at this. The amount of time that decays is much, much less. And look at this right here. The amount of time that decays here is even less, and the time that decays here is even less. So notice that the amount of time I lose accelerates as it gets towards expiration. So a way to think about this possibly, and we might go to this analogy later and over, is think if you were a person that was purchasing milk. Milk has an expiration date. Milk has time decay, and it looks a lot like this, doesn't it? Because if you go to the grocery store and you go to the dairy section, if you're like me, I tend not to buy the milk in the front row. I tend to, reach back in there, and I try to find expiration dates that are further out, where I have more time before the milk spoils. I got to drink it or pour it on my cereal or do whatever I'm going to do with it before it spoils, right? And if I see a container of milk that's going to expire in like a couple days, boy, I'm not interested in short-term expirations, because I have to do so many things with it before it's spoiled, right? I very much would rather have everything I need to do with that milk done in the first little while before I hit that expiration date. So as a buyer, I'm reaching back as far as I can go, and I got a nice long arm. I'm pretty tall. I can get back there almost where the cow is, right? I'll reach way back there, and I'll look at those dates. Now, if you're the seller of the milk, where are you putting the old milk? You're putting it up front. So the consumers are trying to reach in the back, and the sellers are trying to reach in the front. That's a great way possibly to think about this idea that my sweet spot is right around here. So I'll just draw this right around here. Is that if I'm going to, and I'm not saying you have to do this rigidly, or just a basic concept, but to me, if I'm going to sell an option, I like the idea of selling more towards this side of maybe 2.5 months out, maybe 6 weeks, maybe even a month. But if I was going to be a buyer of an option, if I was going to buy, you know what? It's going to cost me a little more to buy out here. It wouldn't cost me very much to buy here, but you know what? I'm not going to lose as much time. So if my option does what I want it to do, and I sell it, I retain most of the time investment, or the time value I had to pay for. Remember, time value plus the intrinsic value, right? Intrinsic value. That's what an option premium, well, let's finish off that word, value. That's what an option premium is, right? What we pay for. So this is always going to go down. This is always going to be negative. So it's a race. It's a race between the intrinsic value going up larger than the time value before expiration. Let me say it again. It's a race that the intrinsic value would go up larger than this. Let's put it this way. Let's say the milk, cost me $2, but I'm going to use it to make ice cream that I can sell for $5. So, I'm going to take that intrinsic value of that milk, and I'm going to buy it at wholesale. I'm going to sell it at retail. It's going to go up, but I only have a certain amount of time to make that ice cream. Does that make sense? And so that's the idea here with the option is I've got to have the value of that option go up before I lose the time value of that option. That's the game. That's the race. So remember this right here is that, I tend to like to sell options that are, 6 weeks or less. That's not a hard and fast rule. That's just a concept, right? And I tend to like to buy options that are, 2.5 months or more, right? A little bit more than that. So, and I have a kind of a no man's land in the middle. So if I'm a buyer of option, I tend to spend the money to buy more time. If I'm a seller of option, I don't sell them for as much, but I want that time to decay. So I'm a big fan of selling 2-week options, 1-week options. I like 1-month options, but I'm not as big a fan of selling long-term options. Now, speaking of long-term options, let's look at the time periods. There are options that expire weekly. In fact, there's even some that might last 1 or 2 days on high liquid indexes and stocks. Monthly is what they might call a standard. These are often non-standard, N-O-N, non-standard. These are standard options, and this is how it used to be. Is a month was about it. That's how it used to be in the old days. But now you can get them days at a time, for sure. Look, Siri thinks I'm talking to her, so we're going to turn Siri off. Sorry, I forgot to turn it off when I started recording. So long-term options, and I'll say about 8 months plus. We call these long-term equity anticipation securities. We call them LEAPs, long-term equity anticipation securities, and they have options that are about a year away. Okay, about a year away, and I think they change them 8 months. To be more of a standard type option. So if it's a year or more away, you're buying what's called the LEAPs. Now let's talk about these expiration dates. There's standard expiration, and generally they expire the 3rd Friday of the month. So standard expiration day is on the 3rd Friday of the month, unless there's a holiday or the market's closed for some weird reason. Generally it's the 3rd Friday of the month. I'll go back to what I said here, is that it's just important to know wherever it is, it's important to know the expiration date for sure. And so a non-standard option is going to be something other than that, right? Something other than the 3rd Friday of the month. Now, last thing we're going to say about expiration is how you settle. So options are liquid, right? Options, just like stocks, are generally liquid. A market maker stands ready to buy or sell. Now, that doesn't mean you get the price you want. It just means that options are generally liquid, meaning that you can turn them into cash. You might not turn them into the amount you want to turn them into, but you can get rid of them or buy them pretty easily. If the market maker has a quote, then you can usually buy or sell them. So they're liquid. And what can happen, and we talked about this earlier, is you can do 2 things. You can either sell your option, right? You can sell your option, or you can exercise your option. And there's sometimes we want to do both, right? Or we want someone to exercise the option on us. And so what happens is when we sell an option, there's going to be a little bit of time value left in there. It's before the expiration date. We say, look, here's an option. It's got this much intrinsic value, and here's the expiration date. Let's go ahead and do a deal and just buy my option. So you never touch the stock. You never have to touch the stock. However, there might be a time where you want to exercise that option, where you actually do want to say, yeah, I have the right to buy this stock at a certain price, and I want to do it. Maybe you want to do it early and exercise your option early. You can do that. And maybe it's because of a dividend. Most people don't, because why would you want to lose that time value, right? When you exercise an option, you're just dealing with strike prices. You don't get any of that nice, time value that is there. But there are people that do, and people that can, and after that Friday is over, on Saturday morning, all the stock trades hands with market makers or your brokerage. Everything gets settled, and that's what we call settlement. And so settlement is a very important part of this. Delivery is where you trade the option or exercise the option, but there's also cash settlement. Cash settlement, which means that you would just get a cash equivalent. Now that's very important. They call these European style sometimes. For example, if you trade options on the S&P 500 index, there is no stock to deliver. It's an index. So what they do is they take whatever cash value would be there as if there were a stock, and you just settle in cash. So, you can either take delivery when you exercise the option, or you can settle in cash. Most of it's just trade the option away, before that expiration date. That's why it's so important to know what that expiration date is. So with that, you might review these options sections. We ought to know what a put is and what a call is. At this point, we ought to know what a premium is. We ought to know what a strike price is, and we ought to know the expiration date at a very minimum before we begin to paper trade these options. And now what we're going to be moving into is we're going to start talking about 3 or 4 basic options trades that you begin trading on paper, practicing, understanding in and out. Chances are you're going to learn about spread trades and other trades, and this makes me very nervous. There's an advertisement right now for a particular online brokerage where a newbie comes in and kind of feels like the odd person out because this man and woman are talking jargon, and one of them is trading an iron condor and the other one's trading a butterfly. And these are spread trades where we have multiple types of legs of options and different options on top of each other. I would not recommend anyone do that until they've learned exit strategies for those, until they've learned all 4 pillars, particularly risk management for multiple leg options. It's a bigger discussion than this initial class. And there's something called the Greeks. A person should absolutely know their Greeks before they start trading those advanced options. And so I very much encourage you to investigate that, look at any presentations or previews we have on the Ultimate Options course so you can get a feel of where you are. But we're just going to stick with some very basic options trades that are still, anytime you use the word option, I feel like you can go up the aggressiveness meter. Options are not to be trifled with, but there are different degrees of risk on the aggressiveness meter, so that's important. So this is a good time to take some action steps, a good time to, now that you've had a few sessions, every once in a while we have some action steps. Number 1, study the option chain for 5 stocks. Go out and just pick any 5 stocks. You might use a fundamental analysis and some of the tools and skills you've learned. You might use a technical analysis and then look at their chart and say, all right, well, let's look at the option chain and see what my choices are in terms of strike prices, right? Where can I do this? And just begin to look at the options chain. There'll be parts of it you are familiar with. There might be parts of it that you still have some learning to do. But specifically, there are 3 things specifically to begin recognizing on an option chain. First is look where the calls are and the puts are, and find the at-the-money calls and puts. Find the strike prices that are close to the money, and then see which ones are in the money and out of money, and watch how their premiums change. Just take a look. We're not trading anything, even on paper at this moment. We're just looking at an option chain for the first time. Look at the strike price increments. Some are every $1, some are every 50 cents, some are every $5. So you just notice that the market maker isn't required to have any specific standard on this. You'll find some, again, that are $1. There might be a $31, $32, $33, $34 strike. Or there might be 50-cent strike prices, in the increments. And then also look at the bid and ask prices for the premium. Notice the difference between those two and practice finding that midpoint where you can begin to split the spread or shave the spread a little bit and see what the bid and ask are, just like on stocks. And then note that the premium will be different for different expiration dates. We talked about time decay. So look at maybe an at-the-money option for 1 month, and then go look out another month and look at the at-the-money option. See how much difference there is in what you pay. But don't be lured into the lottery here, right? Be smart in understanding this idea of time decay. And if you're part of our small group coaching program and you're in a coaching team, report to your coach as he or she has you scheduled, and stay on track with your 4 pillars of investing. When we come back, After you've taken a while to do your action steps, when you've completed those action steps, we'll actually start paper trading and practicing different types of trades, starting not with buying, but actually starting with selling options, being the person that makes the promise, and we'll work on selling some puts. I think that's a great place to start in the 4 pillars of investing when it comes to an options transaction.